So lastly, here is a Fox right-wing a-hole who seems to think that he is involved in some type of like wartime reporting here. I mean, he's got the whole thing. I'm surprised he's not wearing a flak jacket.
He does the hush tones.
Yes. Here we go. This is that guy Griff, who usually they send out to harass like actors or something like that to get them to say like, how come you didn't? How come you said America, love it or leave it or something? But here he is. Here he is. He's in the woods, folks, down at the border.
We've been hiding in the bushes, waiting to witness one of these crossings. Let's go. They're coming right now. You can see they've come in. They've got a family in a raft.
Excuse me, sir. Were you trying to cross into America illegally?
Yeah, there they are. There it is.
So what we're witnessing now
six
is
people,
a family that
3 or
was
4
being brought
kids.
over by that
One has a
smuggler
scimitar.
that was paddling in the raft. This is an attempt to illegally cross, and they've gone back over there. We've seemed to have foiled this attempt, but officials tell us that he's probably just going to look for another spot. It's a legal crossing?
Yes.
Yes? But you came anyway?
Why?
Well, why did you come? Is what I'm asking you. Can you tell me why you came illegally?
The situation of Honduran.
You're in Honduras? You're from Honduras?
Yes.
What are the conditions there?
You could not have work in there because the criminals always will get your money.
Yeah. I wonder if Griff speaks Spanish. I mean, what like the idea of like actually sending somebody down who could actually communicate to these people in some fashion. Very fortunate for Griff that this Honduran speaks 2 languages, and because I don't know
more languages than he does.
Right, exactly.
It's crazy that he thinks that he comes off well in this.
Does for their people.
For their people, I think they do. They're not as
people
nuanced.
Who are completely divorced from any type of basic human empathy.
Like, you have to be pretty far gone to watch that and listen to what she said and think that these people are like scary terrorists.
You have to be pretty far gone could be the description of the Fox News viewing base. But you know what? This is another thing that Tucker Carlson does that's intelligent. He'll say a lot and very manipulative. He says a lot. Conditions in many countries are horrible, and that's not a good thing. And you should feel bad about it. And maybe you should even do something about it, but it's not our political responsibility. That's how you offload a ping of conscience.
Right. And, I mean, of course, it's not hard to make the argument that it is, in fact, our political responsibility.
Well, of course, that's the other conclusion. You could draw a map of, I mean, even MS-13 was literally created in Latin America or in LA, migrated back to Latin America, and had a lot to do with what Reagan was doing in Central America in the 80s, which was absolutely vicious.
Right. And we destabilized a lot of these countries, supported coups in these countries. Our drug policies have encouraged all sorts of cartels. So it's easy to find a political responsibility.
You could do a
you were
heat
inclined.
map, probably.
Yeah.
Of every single place that has an immigration crisis, you could link whether it's World Bank IMF policies or the coups, things you're talking about. You could probably draw linear relationships between U.S. foreign policy and certainly anywhere in the Caribbean or Latin America.
And one thing that did not come up in the context of the debate, which I lament, was the implications of immigration on things like wages in this country. And since it didn't come up in the debate, I guess I'll drop this now. But the vast majority of studies show, and to the extent that there are studies that are contrary to this, they've been debunked by some, in some instances, by right-wing think tanks, that immigrant labor largely does not substitute one-to-one for American native labor. And there is as much data that argues that if you were to restrict immigration, particularly for immigrant labor when it comes to things like farm work, that you would end up getting far more automation, which would ultimately knock out native workers as well. Additionally, apparently restricting immigration can have adverse effects for high skilled labor, in that immigrant labor provides domestic services which allow, many instances, mothers, some instances, fathers, to return to the workforce earlier because they are given, because they have childcare. None of this has to be undocumented. You could have all these people documented and they could still function in the same way. It may raise some prices a little bit, but the market for nannies, I think, is, a function of demand in a certain area. And certainly with migrant workers, it would be nice to bring them into the system so that they could get protection in terms of wages. But there's simply no data to support that they have a significant impact on lowering wages. And then on top of that, we are aging out. The white population in this country, the native population, is getting old. And we need more workers to support our society, like things like Social Security.
I mean, this is even more extreme in the UK.
And it's actually a big problem in China as well.
Right.
I mean, it's one of our competitive advantages is that we have.
Well, that's how Japan actually undercut their boom.
There you go.
Negative population
Here's
growth.
the thing, though. Like, I don't like to argue on their terms about this stuff. Like, whether immigrants are good for the economy or whether in some sectors they have been used in the past to break unions and drive down wages. That's not how I decide what rights people have, So, like, humans have the right to freedom of movement. And if the system cannot support that, then the system needs to change, period.
I mean, that's I don't have a problem with that argument, but I'm addressing to the extent that there's an argument out there that wages, particularly in the context of a middle-class debate, what hurts the middle class, that immigrants present some type of threat. There is, I think, obviously another argument that we should have no borders, or that people should have the rights to migrate wherever they want.
But those are kind of different things, right? Like, I'm just
that's
saying.
Right,
just
exactly.
what I'm saying. It's like it's one thing when people say, we should support immigrants because they do X, X, and X, which I agree with you because I think there's innate values at work. And it's another to just say, you're literally lying about what they're doing here.
Yeah, exactly. I'm addressing the arguments of the woman who owns the lake house, who thinks that migrant hordes are going to take over her house. I'm addressing the arguments that we hear from people who may not subscribe to the idea that we shouldn't have borders, that there is some type of material harm that is being done to American citizens or American workers by immigrants. And my argument is that's not the case. Now, yes, you can take undocumented or even documented immigrants and use them and leverage them
This
against.
has happened.
Yes, I know. You can do that. You can do that with scabs too. I mean, who don't necessarily have to be undocumented. And
Yeah.
I'm not even sure that it's sort of maybe easier to manipulate immigrant populations than not. If that's the argument that you're making.
Or other economically marginalized populations.
Right. I mean, so maybe it's not a good idea to say that they are. I mean, you tell me, do you think immigrants are more easily manipulated than others to break unions?
I mean, it's happened in the past. It's happened
I
with
know.
immigrants. It's happened with other marginalized populations.
Well,
by bosses who want to pay people less.
Do you think that they're more susceptible to it?
I mean, yeah, if you can threaten to call ICE on somebody, of course.
Right. And so, I mean, I think that's a problem. But that's why I think we should be brought in to legalize them in this instance. But that is, I don't think that the right is concerned about their negative effects against unions.
No, of course not. It's pretty disingenuous on their part. But you
That was
also,
the
when
point
they're
of what I was
making
saying.
a material argument, like, I like it that you're arguing with them on that level, I guess. But yeah, you need to deal with the material facts at hand. And in the past, like, yeah, there have been benefits to our economy, and there have been bad things too. Bosses have abused marginalized populations and used them to drive down wages. But the answer to that is to always incorporate everyone into your worker struggle.
Yes. All right. Well, look, we got to take.